Okay, guys, I am going to start my playlist for maneuver guides. This is for the PPL or commercial level. And right here, it says 50 degrees, which is commercial level, but for PPL, you're going to be 45. So same rules apply. I didn't create this, actually, my flight instructor created this. A little cheat sheet, okay, that you can use to chair fly. It tells us our standards and that we need to maintain, and it tells us our minimum restricted altitudes if you do have one. And I want you guys to go to your ACS. This is the test answers, okay, to your test. It tells you not how to do it, but the standards that you need to maintain. People are afraid to look at the ACS for some reason. Okay, first thing that we need to do is we need to do our flow. Okay, so I want you guys to do your L flow real quick. And make sure your fuel selector valve is on both. Your trim, this should be like a second. Make sure that your mixture is leaned out for best power because steep turns are a cruise maneuver. Okay, make sure your flaps are up, and you think, why would my flaps not be up? You'd be surprised. Sometimes you forget to take that 10 degrees out if you do a short or soft field takeoff. Okay, and sure, yeah, you can check your lights, but really, I just want to make sure that you guys are properly leaned out. Your trim is set to level, and that your flaps aren't up. Okay, trim for 95 knots. Depending on the atmospheric conditions for the day, 95 might be really hard to get. Okay, so I would say settle for 90. Your power setting is also going to depend on the day. If you have a high density altitude day, you might need a little bit more power to start off with, so probably 2200. If the day is cooler and you have more air molecules to fly on, aka the density altitude is lower, okay, your power setting is probably going to start off at around 2100. But airspeed, we're looking between 90 and 95, power between 21 and 22. At this point in time, you've already done your clearing turn, right? I hope to God you've already done your clearing turn, because if you don't, that's an automatic fail. I want you to look at the horizon, and I want you to pick a point that's very far away, maybe a snowy peak, maybe some rolling hills, maybe a distinct part of the mountain. Okay, bug your heading, call out your altitude. Okay, so starting, I call it out. I say starting my steep turn at 5,000 feet. All right, and now when you bank, when you initiate the bank, okay, bank like you mean it. Okay, and when I say bank like you mean it, don't be like, because then you're going to start losing your altitude, because then your vertical component of lift is going to go more horizontal and you're going to drop out of the sky. Okay, so just don't be like Top Gun, but just really start to bank it. Make sure you're staying coordinated with rudder. Okay, so let's go to the right side first. We bank 50 degrees, and then once we pass 30 degrees, I want you to apply, depending on the atmospheric conditions for the day, anywhere between 100 and 200 power. So what I do is I bank, right? I'm making sure I'm not applying back pressure or forward pressure. And once I hit 30 degrees, I call out. I go 10 degrees, 20 degrees, 30 degrees, add power, continue the bank. Once I get to 50 degrees, which is about right here, let me mark this on the bank indicator. 50 degrees, I maintain that 50 degrees, okay? And what I'm doing is I'm looking at the horizon, and I'm making sure I'm cutting the horizon with, in my case, it's going to be there's two sets of rivets. There's rivets that go from here down the aircraft cowling, and there's there's rivets that go right here down the cowling. And as you go into that right-handed turn, this set of rivets is usually cutting the horizon. I think CFIs are a little bit too dependent on the rivets cutting the horizon, because your horizon, depending on your terrain and where you're at, is going to change. Okay, so if you're like, okay, all I need to do is get the rivets to cut the horizon, well, sure, you may be cutting the horizon with rivets, but then your bank angle is only 35 degrees, and you're like, oh shit, I need more than that. So don't be super dependent on that. What I do is I just note, okay, now that I've established 50 degrees, I know that I just want to memorize the visual line that's going across the horizon. Okay. The instruments that I'm mostly looking at when I'm performing this maneuver is my airspeed indicator, my bank angle, okay, and my altimeter. I do not want you guys looking at this, I'm going to say at all. Why? Because there is a 5 to second delay in the reading on the VSI. When I first started flight training, I was actually instructed to look at my VSI, and then if I had a if I had a descent rate, let's say if it said minus 400 here, I would start applying back pressure, but the problem is you're already 4 to 7 seconds, 5 to 7 seconds behind the power curve. So look at your altimeter as you're going to these turns. If you see that your altimeter, your needle right here is dropping and you're losing altitude, this is almost instant. Okay, there's a tiny delay, but you can catch it way faster than the VSI. So the instruments that I'm mainly looking at for this are airspeed indicator, my bank angle, and my altimeter. Okay. As we complete that 360 and we come back to the other side, it says right here about 20 to 25 degrees prior to your starting point, start your rollout. So going back to wings level, I would arguably say around 15 degrees seems to be the sweet spot, at least for me. Okay. But you have to pay attention to that outside visual reference point of your point, and you're going to lose it in the turn, right? Because you're going the complete opposite direction. Make sure your heading is bugged. And then at about right here or right here, I start just slowly going back to wings level and immediately go back to the opposite side, okay? As I go back to the opposite side, depending on atmospheric conditions, I may have to pull out just a teeny tiny bit of power, around 100 to 200. But the biggest thing here is that as you go to that other side, you have to maintain a little bit of forward pressure. Otherwise, you're going to balloon up. Okay, so it looks like this. You bank, and then you come back around to the other side, and then you go wings level, and then I go to left, and I push down just a little bit, and then I start my bank. And you really want to make sure that when you go into the next turn, that you're staying coordinated, okay? You want to keep that ball in the middle at all times. Otherwise, you're going to become uncoordinated, and you're going to start losing altitude, okay? Your standards for this: heading plus or minus 10, altitude plus or minus 100, airspeed plus or minus 10, bank angle plus or minus 5. That's how you can perform a steep turn, but I really want you guys to experiment with this maneuver and try different things, because some things may work for your instructor, they may work for other students, but it may not work for you, okay? I have another little trick for you guys that I like to do. This is one of the things that one of my instructors taught me, but it is bank, okay? And I'll make this make sense in a second here. Power. I'm using a mouse, so. And then trim. What do I mean by that? See this step right here? When it says bank 50 degrees, 200 RPM, at 30 degrees bank, add back pressure. That's one way to do it. If that's not working for you, what I want you to do is I want you to bank first, call out bank, and simultaneously add 100 power. But for this maneuver, for this method, I want you to start at 2200. Okay? So I'm going to walk you through this and then we'll call it good. Power set to 2200. Initiate bank, coordinate with right rudder, add 100 power. Call out my bank angle, 10, 20, 30. Once I get to 30 degrees, I want you to put up 2 trims, nose up. So 10, 20, 30, go down the trim wheel, 2 nose up trims. This is going to relieve back pressure, okay? The pros of this is that it relieves back pressure. It makes it a little bit easier to control your bank angle. The cons to this is that it's very easy to balloon up and lose your airspeed. Very easy, because now you're nose up, okay? So if you're having problems maintaining the bank angle on your steep turns, try out that method. Bank, simultaneously add power at 30 degrees, trim out, nose up twice, okay? Once you recover from this maneuver and you've done your right 360 and then your left 360, you have to remember that you're gonna be nose up, and when you go level, you're gonna have to put nose trim back in, pull out power back to cruise, okay? All right, I hope that helped, and that is how I perform the steep turns.